Damn, something straight out of the peanuts.
It is. Okay, there we go. Hello. Hi, friends. This is Module 5, Part 2, The Chemistry of Life. And put my glasses up so you don't get the glare. All right. So we're going to talk about organic chemistry. And so in order for a molecule to be organic, it has to contain carbon and any one of these following: hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus. But so look at water, H2O, you think is an organic molecule, right? We use it all the time. It seems like just something that we would consider an organic molecule, but it's not. Why? In your head, someone's answering, I know. Because it doesn't contain carbon, right? It contains hydrogen and oxygen, but there's no carbon. So if it doesn't contain carbon, it can't be organic. But now there's another molecule here, CaCO3, which is Ca is calcium, C is carbon, so yay, got our carbon. O, oxygen, we have our oxygen, and that's in that list of one of those red atoms or elements, but calcium is mixed with it. And you can't, it has to be carbon and one or more of these things, but not anything else. So because it contains calcium, it's not an organic molecule. And water is not an organic molecule because it does not contain carbon. Okay? Just a couple things. All right, biosynthesis. Excuse me. Oh, I didn't say fabulous yet. Hi, how's everybody? Is everybody fabulous? Twice. Biosynthesis is a process used by living organisms to produce larger molecules from smaller molecules. So bio means life, and synthesis means to make something, right? So we're making something living, right? Not that we're creating anything living, only God can do that, but we're making something living. So think of your Legos, right? So you have a bunch of small Legos and you want to make, you know, a house. So you're using the smaller pieces to build something bigger. This is just, we're creating something that is living organisms use, not Legos. Sorry, my allergies are bothering me today. Okay, so photosynthesis is an example of biosynthesis, right? So photosynthesis is taking something, two smaller molecules, and I wrote on my little board here. It's taking carbon dioxide and water, along with, like we talked about last week, it needs sunlight and it needs chlorophyll, right? But just looking at the reaction right now, it takes carbon dioxide and takes water, and they react and they form sugar and water. I don't know if you can see that, okay? So it's a form of biosynthesis. It created sugar, which is very important for the plant, right? Because the plant needs to eat, and that's the point of photosynthesis. That's why plants do it, right? And then they also end up giving us oxygen, which is why we like our plants and our trees and our algae, because a byproduct of that reaction is something that all of us use. Oxygen. Okay. Also, the book talks about biosynthesis, and it is an example of anabolism. Ana means what? Up or positive, right? And if you remember back when we talked about types of metabolism, there's anabolism, to build up, and catabolism, to break down, right? Biosynthesis, because we're making something, is an example of anabolism. You're creating something, you're putting something together. Okay. All right, so the first one to talk about, these are called, one of the types of organic molecules that they talk about are carbohydrates. Everybody knows carbs. Carbs are yummy most of the time. If you're trying to lose weight, you don't want to eat too many of these guys. But so carbohydrates contain only carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And if you look at the name, it's easy to remember. Carbo for carbon, and hydrate, to hydrate something means to add water, right? So they're adding water to carbon. So they're C's and H's and O's because water is H2O, right? So C's, H's, and O's. So that's pretty good, right? They made it easy for us that time. Okay, the structural formula of a molecule gives you the type and number of atoms in the molecule and which atoms are linked to which. Okay, so if you turn to page 143 in your book, I'll put my glasses on here. Everybody's turning to 143, right? Fabulous, I can tell. Okay, so if you look at the top of that page there, you could see that the structural formula of glucose is up there, okay? And the lines between the letters represent chemical bonds. So that's fun, right? So the carbon chain is in the middle there. Look at the top of page 143. The carbon chain is right in the middle of the molecule. C-C-C. You see them, they're all linked in a row like that, right? And we're talking about organic molecules, so you're gonna expect to see carbon connected together, right? Okay, and these bonds can be single bonds, one line, double bonds, looks like an equal sign, or triple bonds, 1, 2, 3 on top of one another, right? No, that's supposed to say when they are next to one another, they are bonded. So when you see something like OH, if you look again at the top of 143, there are, the carbon is bonded to the oxygen, and there's an H next to it. That H, that O and H, they're bonded. It's a single bond. Just like multiplication, when things are like pushed up against one another, that means multiply. Well, in this case, they're pushed up against one another. That means that they're bonded together. There's a single bond there between O and H. It's hard to do it this way, you know. It's so much easier when I'm in there and I can run back and forth to the board. Okay, so here's fun because, you know, they can't make it easy. Science is fun, but doesn't mean it's easy. So there's more than one structural formula. So more than one structure, right? You could build a house lots of different ways, but it's still called a house. So a chemical formula is the same. So a house is a house is a house, right? It may have the same amount of bricks, but the way you put them together is going to make the house look different. And it's going to have different properties in different rooms, right? Okay. Well, so the structure or the arrangement of the atoms is different, okay? So sometimes you could have a chain structure like we can see on the top of 143. The top of 143 is a chain structure where they're just kind of in a line and then things are linked off of it, okay? But you could also have a ring structure, and that's also on page 143 on the bottom, where you can see that they actually link together in a ring, which is pretty cool, I think. Prettier to draw anyway. Not that I'm a great artist, because you guys know, but it's still more fun. Okay. So isomers. The definition of an isomer is two different molecules that have the same chemical formula, okay? So they have the same formula, but they have different structures. So if you turn to page 144, just turn your page. On the bottom, now glucose and fructose are both sugars, okay? And we talked about glucose before. And the thing is, they have the same chemical formula, C6H12O6. So what's interesting is last week when I wrote that on the board and I said to you, who knows what this is? If someone had said fructose, they would have been correct. Nobody said glucose either, but that's fine. So if someone says C6H12O6, what do you have? You'd have to say, well, what is the structural formula of that molecule? In order to really, really answer correctly, most of the time they're looking for glucose anyway, because that is more commonly what we use as energy as humans, especially. So most of the time when we say C6H12O6, we're talking about glucose. But chemically speaking, it is the chemical formula for both of those sugars. The thing is, what makes them different is how those atoms combine with one another. So they both form a ring structure, but as you can see on page 144 on the bottom, put my glasses down again. Those rings are very different, right? It's pretty cool. All those atoms together can combine in a different way to form different. Now, and they taste a little bit different. Fructose is often found in fruit, in certain fruits. All right, let's move on. Okay, so we're going to continue with sugars. Sugars they fall under the carbohydrate, organic molecule of carbohydrates. We have monosaccharides, oh my goodness gracious, monosaccharides. That means one. Mono means one. So they're called simple sugars. And that means that they contain somewhere between 3 and 10 carbon atoms. Remember, it's an organic molecule, so it has to contain carbon. So examples of simple sugars, glucose and fructose, okay, contains, well, what is it? C6, right? So each of those contains 6 carbon atoms. Okay. Then we have disaccharides. Di means they're made of 2 monosaccharides. So just stick 2 of those guys together and you get a different sugar made of more than 10. So 11 or more carbon atoms. So when you combine glucose and fructose, you can get sucrose. And then polysaccharides are made of more than 2 monosaccharides. So mono, di, and poly, 1, 2, and many. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. So now, okay. So there's something called a dehydration reaction. So if we want to make, like you say, okay, well, how do we make sucrose? How do you just put fructose next to glucose and say, okay, ta-da, and you get sucrose? No, of course not. We're talking about chemistry, right? Always go back to the module that we're looking at, right? It's the chemistry of life, and we're talking about organic molecules. So in order to create something, biosynthesis, it takes 2 smaller molecules, 2 monosaccharides, to create a disaccharide. And the way we do that, the reaction we use is a dehydration reaction. And when you're dehydrated, what do you need? What do you want? You want water, right? You feel dehydrated, okay? So if a dehydration reaction means we're to dehydrate something, we're gonna remove the water, right? It's kind of like when you make beef jerky. I don't know if you've ever made beef jerky, but you're dehydrating it, right? You're removing all the fluid from the meat. And that's one way of preserving things, right? But anyway, I digress like everything, like always. So anyhow, dehydrate. So dehydrate means to remove water, okay? So turn to page 145. That's just our next page there. See, I'm not drawing this week, right? You guys are saved. So the dehydration reaction creates a disaccharide plus water, right? Water is gonna be the byproduct of a dehydration reaction because we're removing it, right? So we're removing an H and two H's and an oxygen, a water molecule. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Go ahead and look at that reaction. If you need to, you could pause the video and kind of go through that if you to understand it if you need to. And they actually circle the hydrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen that's actually going to be removed in the reactants. What are the reactants? On the left side of the equation are the reactants. So the reactants in this example are glucose and fructose, and then the products are sucrose and water. All right. Okay, so they talked about how sweet, I mean, sugars, as soon as we hear the word sugars, we think, well, it must be sweet, right? Well, and it is true to some extent. So monosaccharides are sweet, right? When we eat sugar, glucose, table sugar, we sprinkle it on our strawberries or whatever. It's sweet. And then, but as we go down the list, mono are the sweetest, and then disaccharides are a little less sweet, and then polysaccharides tend to not be sweet. Polysaccharides are actually starches. So if you think about the food that we eat, starches are things like potatoes, pasta, rice, and the body actually makes starch too, and it's called glycogen. We store sugar as starch called glycogen. We store that in our liver, and when we need energy, our body releases glycogen. Our liver releases the glycogen, and it breaks it back down into monosaccharides, to glucose, so that our cells can use it for energy, right? So if you are into sports, and you a lot of times, well, yeah, okay, different example, but anything that you're doing, if you're exercising for a long time, right, you're probably going to burn the immediate glucose source that you have. Like if you just, if you had breakfast this morning and you're exercising in the afternoon, you're going to burn off those things first, right? But once you burn through that, your body has glycogen as backup storage, so that because you can't run out of energy. If you run out of energy, it's a problem, right? Your cells are always working. Okay, so mono are the sweetest. Polysaccharides are not sweet, because think about rice or potatoes. They're not sweet anymore, but they're sugars, right? They're saccharides. It's so cool. I never really thought about that. Okay. All right, so hydrolysis is the opposite of dehydration synthesis, right? So hydrolysis, okay, so it breaks down polysaccharides and disaccharides into monosaccharides by adding water. So if we're going from monosaccharide plus monosaccharide to polysaccharide or disaccharide, to start mono, di, that's going to be a dehydration synthesis. We're pulling the water out to create the disaccharide. If we want to go back the other way, what do we have to do, right? We have to add the water back in. It's actually, you don't even have to change the reaction. You just have to switch the arrow, right? So water now plus disaccharide yields monosaccharide plus monosaccharide. So you really just turn the arrow around, but we call it a different thing. So dehydration synthesis is the removal of water to form a disaccharide. Hydrolysis is adding the water in to make, to break them down back into their simple sugars, monosaccharides. Okay, it's not too bad. Hydro sounds like water, right? Now lysis is to break down. So adding water to break down. That's what it means. Adding water to break down. Okay, not bad. Okay. Organic acids and bases. So I know that you guys, I think I'm kind of covering the bases part there, but it's acids and bases. So if you add an acid and a base together, you usually get water or salt. Acids contain this group, this group is always on an acid. It's COOH. Okay, carbon, oxygen, oxygen, and hydrogen. That's called an acid group. And if you turn to page 147 at the top, you'll see how those atoms are connected. There's a C double bonded to one O and then single bonded to OH, COOH, okay? Those are organic acids, top of page 147, okay? Bases contain an amine group, and they didn't specifically, amine group is usually like NH3, but they didn't specifically, because they differ sometimes, so they didn't make a point of drawing those. But so I don't know if you've heard of the pH scale, okay, but 7 is neutral, like we see there. Acids are below 7 and bases are above 7. And the thing is, most people think that acids are worse than bases, but honestly, they can be equally as hurtful to us, okay? So if you swallow an acid, I'm not talking about foods and things, I'm talking about real acids. If you swallow an acid or you inhale it or you touch it or you do the same thing with bases, they will hurt our cells just as much as the other one. So don't do it. But things that we, like orange juice, right, is acidic. I think even bananas go one way or the other on this scale. They're just a little off, right? Water is supposed to be about 7. There's like a fine little window there, but it should be neutral, right? We don't want to be acidic or basic. Okay, so now we're going to move on to, oh, actually, you know what, here, let's go back. If you look at 147 again, you could see, orange juice is a 3. I mean, that's a big deal, right? Lemon juice is even a battery acid, though. Look at battery acid is all the way down by almost 0. You don't want to touch that. I mean, I don't know if you've ever tried to change a battery in the car, or help your parents or whatever. Sometimes some of the acid will kind of leak out onto the bolts or the connectors there, and you don't want to get that on your hands. It's very bad. I don't change those things, so I don't know if it's horribly bad, but I just know that it's not good. My husband always says, I say to him, could we change this or whatever? So, and he says to me, you mean, can I change it? And I mean, yes, but whatever. Okay, so, but now look, see, now ammonia, like household ammonia, some people use ammonia to clean in their houses. And that is basic. I mean, and that's just as bad for you. And look at milk, blood, pure water runs about 7, right? The other thing that people always tell you, I don't know if you know this or not, but you never want to clean with or work together with ammonia and Clorox. Like, you know, Clorox bleach and ammonia. Like if you're cleaning, you never want to combine those two things, because you're combining an acid and a base, and the fumes, if you inhale those fumes, they're toxic to us, and they will hurt you. So if you decide to clean, make sure that you're only ever using one or the other, a bleach solution, bleach and water, or an ammonia solution, but not both. Most times people, I mean, they're very careful about that, but I don't know. Sometimes these things, if nobody tells you, you'll never know. Okay, lipids, fats. Okay, so lipids are formed by 3 fatty acids linked to a glycerol via dehydration reaction. So they're formed by removing water. So 3 fatty acid chains, 3 fatty acids are linked to this glycerol molecule. So if you turn to page 148, you'll see that one. Okay, and they're formed also by dehydration. So it removes water to link those 3 fatty acids to the glycerol. They are hydrophobic. Hydro, again, referring to water, like we learned in for Latin. And then phobic. If you're phobic, you're afraid of something, right? You have a phobia of, my phobia is probably snakes and spiders. No, not doing it. I'm sure y'all have phobias of something or other too. So lipids specifically are hydrophobic. They don't like water. So think, and you guys have all seen it, water and oil don't mix, right? So if you think about your salad dressing, the bottle of salad dressing in your refrigerator, you always have to shake it up right before you're going to use it, because some part of that is water or vinegar, which is more water-like. And then the other part is oil, like if it's oil and vinegar, balsamic vinaigrette, Italian dressing, you know, it's parts. So it separates because the water doesn't, or the oil doesn't like the water. So it's going to sit on top of it until you mix it up again. Okay, saturated fats are made of fatty acids with no double bonds. It's all saturated means it's as many, how can I say it? As many carbon atoms as you can get in there. Okay, sorry. It says, yeah, no, forget it. Anyway, excuse me. So saturated fats are made of fatty acids with no double bonds between the carbon atoms. Unsaturated are made with fatty acids with at least one double bond. So you can think of it like this. Saturated means there are as many bonds as there possibly could be, as many single bonds as there could be. Unsaturated means there's at least one double bond. I think that's probably just a memorized fact. Okay, proteins. Proteins, building blocks of lots and lots of stuff. So proteins are involved in virtually every chemical reaction that supports life. And why is that? Because enzymes are proteins. Basic building blocks. So amino acids are the basic building blocks of proteins. There are 20 different amino acids that we can pick from. It's kind of like the alphabet, right? We got these 20 different, I know there's 26 letters in the alphabet, but there are 20 amino acids, and we pick from all of them and we put together these amino acids in a chain to make a protein. They are also combined via dehydration reactions. So they remove the water in order to combine together, and they form peptide bonds. Peptide usually refers to proteins, right? Well, I don't know if you know that, but it does. So when the amino acids link together, they're forming what's called a peptide bond, and they keep adding together to make a protein. Okay. So the amino acids are named by 3 letters. So examples are, one of the amino acids that we have is lysine, glutamic acid. And so for lysine is LYS, and usually the first letter is capitalized. Not usually, it is. And then glutamic acid is GLU. A little confusing because a lot of times we'll use GLU for glucose, but when we're talking about amino acids, it's glutamic acid. Okay, so enzymes. So all enzymes are proteins. Not all proteins are enzymes, right? All enzymes are proteins, but you can't go the other way with it, right? All proteins are enzymes, but not all. Wow. See, I had coffee. All enzymes are proteins, but not all proteins are enzymes, okay? Enzymes are a special class of proteins. They're like super people, right? They act as catalysts for many chemical reactions that support life. And what a catalyst does is it speeds up the reaction, okay? Most perform their job based on their shape. So the shape of the enzyme will fit into a spot in the chemical reaction and make it move faster, okay? And we call that like a lock and key, because, you know, in order to open a lock, you need a certain key, right? Not the key might fit in, but if it won't turn a lot of times. So, you know, I've tried different keys and locks, and you put it in and you're like, oh, this is going to be it. And then it won't turn. So it's the wrong key, right? So it's a lock and key mechanism. So it's got to be the right key for that lock. And then it speeds up the reaction. It's kind of like, the match, like, you know, between the wood and getting a fire. A match is going to speed that up. Lighter fluid would speed it up too, right? Like, woo, here we go. We got lots of fire now, right? So enzymes are catalyst speeds things up, and they're so important in life. And enzymes always end in ACE, A-S-E, okay? Carbohydrates always end in OSE, glucose, fructose, sucrose, okay? Enzymes always end in ACE. So like there's an enzyme called sucrase, ASE, okay? And what do you think it works on? Sucrose, right? So if I give you a bunch of names, all you have to look for, sorry, dogs, and they don't know how to be quiet when someone knocks on the door, unfortunately. Shh, it's okay, it's okay. Someone answer the door, please. Okay. Enzymes are very fragile. They are broken down very quickly. So they come, they do their job, and they're broken down, and then they're reformed, or they're products are used to build other things. But they're very fragile, and they're kind of like princessy. So they like everything in perfect order for them to work. They want the right environment, they want the right lighting, they want the right pH. They just want what they want, or they won't work, or they'll break down. Okay. Okay, I think, I'm sorry. I am going to take a break here. And let's see. I don't know how to do this. Let's see, escape. Okay, so why don't y'all stop here for a minute. And okay, I'm back. I wanted to see where we were at. Wanted to see where we were, and we're doing great. So we're going to move on to DNA. Okay. Hey guys, just 1 minute here. I'm still recording, okay? My husband turns around and walks away. Because I'm not that technically savvy. Okay, so DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, this is the basis of life. It's your instruction manual, and each and every one of us has one, and we are all different, and it's fabulous. Unless you're a twin, an identical twin, you have your own DNA that's unlike anybody else's, and that's the joy of God's creation. We all are all different. DNA is a double chain of nucleotides. It forms a double helix. So helix it turns, okay? It's pretty cool. If you look at page 154 and 155, behind here, looking at my, excuse me for a minute. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, 154 and 155 is great because they show you 3 different versions of DNA. So DNA, it has deoxyribose, and what do we say? Anything that ends in OSE is what? A sugar. Yeah, a sugar. Very good. And a phosphate group and a nucleotide base, right? So DNA is made of these 3 things. Deoxyribose is the sugar, and then there are 4 types of nucleotides. We don't talk too much about the phosphate group. Just know that it is there, right? So deoxyribose is the sugar part. You always have a phosphate group, and then you could have 4 different possibilities for the nucleotide base. And the 4 options are guanine, cytosine, adenine, and thymine. GCAT is an easy way to remember it. GCAT, okay? GCAT. GCAT's fabulous. I know, I had to say it. Jazz hands. Anyhow. Anyhow, and the other thing that is going to make this nice, if you remember it as GCAT, which honestly, I learned this back when, 800 years ago when I was your age, and I still remember GCAT because the G goes with the C and the A goes with the T. You'll see what if you look on, at the pictures in your book, 154, 155, you'll see that anytime there's a T, there's an A. Anytime there's a G, there's a C. So it's nice to remember it that way because you know that the G is always, since there are 2, it's double chains, right? 2 chains. So you have, and it's going to form a ladder. And the rungs of the ladder are these nucleotide bases that are making a bond together, okay? And so on one strand, on one side of the ladder, you're going to have like G and then A, or G, C, A, T. And then on the corresponding other side of the ladder, in order to make the full ladder with the rungs, whenever you see a G, you'll put a C. If you see a T, you put an A. If you see an A, you put a T, right? You understand? And so if you remember it that way, that you'll always know, you always remember what goes with G, what goes with C, GCAT. GCAT. Okay. So the 2 nucleotide chains are held together by hydrogen bonds. So hydrogen bonds hold those things together. It's a strong attraction between the hydrogen atoms and certain other atoms, usually oxygen or nitrogen. Okay, and like we talked about, G always hydrogen bonds with C, and A always goes with T. So if you guys write this down, I didn't write the answer to this. You could maybe Mrs. Johnson can you could either write it on the board so you guys can do the other side. So if I give you on the test, if I give you 1 strand of DNA is this GCATT, GATT, CCAT, what is the order of the other strand that you can make? You guys can do that. Okay. It's weird sitting by myself in my living room to do this with you guys, but all right. So if y'all go around the room and call out each letter to make that other strand, okay? Just so you understand it. Okay. And now I'm going to send this video, which you already know because you just watched it. And I'll send these other 2 videos also so you guys can see those. Osmosis is part of what we talked about last week. And then the macromolecules are what we talked about this week, but they are the, what do they call it? The amoeba sisters. So they're fun to watch. Okay, guys, remember, I hope you did well on your Latin. And the test is open book. And I miss you. And I will see you next week. And yeah, that's it. Okay? Have a wonderful day. And I hope that you learned something today. Okay? Okay. See you guys. I'm going to try to shut this off now. Done. See you next time.